afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be watching us from. Welcome to the Talent Plug podcast, a space where we pretty much dive deep into different and varied career choices that individuals take up. I'm your host, Francis Mulomba, and in this episode, we've got a very interesting personality. She's a friend of mine, somebody that I have seen evolve over time. Um, Her story is very interesting in the sense that, well, she'll talk about it. Yeah, but Ngwana, thank you so much for coming through to the Talent Plug podcast. Really a pleasure to see you and have you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so there is so much I want to ask you that I might skip the intro, which is the most important thing. So before we do that, let's just get into how, no, let's get into who Ngwana is. Tell us a bit about yourself.
I always find it so hard to answer that question
Mm-hmm.
because I am a lot of things.
Okay.
I've come to realize I'm a lot of things. But recently, I'll start. I'm
Right.
weird.
What do you mean by that?
I think one person was actually brave enough to tell me, like, you're so freaking weird. But it was like a good kind of weird, right?
Right.
So I'm like, wait. And also, I was in a phase of my life where I was like doing a lot of like introspection. So I was like, I realized a lot of things about life.
What did they mean when they said you're weird?
So this is what I'm about to explain, right?
Okay.
I'm just different.
Okay.
And I think, I don't know why specifically, but on face value, someone will think, oh, they've clocked me. They know that she's like this. But when they get to know me, I could be like, not totally different, but just off of what they thought. Like,
So what? You've got split personalities.
maybe, but no.
Okay.
I think it's just, I don't like feeling like a stereotype.
Right,
Like,
right,
I'm
right.
just resistant to that. If I could break out in hives, I would probably. So, but then I don't put it out there. I don't show up everywhere like, hey,
Right.
I'm
Like that's me.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's only recently when I've started trying to do that intentionally,
Right.
but obviously managed in a managed way. So anyway, so someone described me as weird. So I was talking to someone else, another person that I met and got to know.
Right.
And I was like, I bet you think I'm weird, right? That's how weird I am. I'll ask you that. I bet you think I'm weird.
Yeah.
You know, because I could tell like they were, you know, when you're getting to know people,
Yeah.
you have your first impressions
Right.
and then I easily break people's first impressions.
Right.
only. That's another thing. So I could tell that they were in that space where they're like, I think this person's like trying to figure me out and they can't, you know.
Right.
So I was presenting the opportunity to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So then they were like, no, you're not weird. You're just free-spirited and you're focused and you know what you want. And I'm like, for the first time, someone has described me in a way that I
Exactly
can
for
agree
who I
with.
am.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in a way that's particularly relevant at that time. So I was like,
Interesting.
you're right.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Very, very interesting. So you've talked about the personality that you have. Just speak a little bit about the kind of upbringing that you had, because I pretty much want to understand how you've gotten to this level. So obviously your upbringing played a very pivotal role in shaping who you are right now. So can you just speak about that?
Okay. So where can I start? Most of what I can say about my upbringing, it's stuff that I've like processed and realized as I've gotten older, obviously.
Right.
So I grew up very curious. And I think I spent a lot of time alone,
Right.
being an only girl. Well, it's me and my older brother.
Right.
Being an only girl, but I never, like I said, stereotypes. So I was always the little sister that's tagging along with my brother, and he
Right.
would chase me, but I'll be like, I'm
Yeah,
coming, or
yeah.
I'll cry, or I'll manipulate. You know, I'll last bonza.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, last born like me.
yeah, team last born.
Yep.
Yeah, so I grew up, I think people would describe me as a tomboy.
Right.
I enjoyed being outside. I enjoyed like being active, climbing trees and playing football.
Right.
But I was smart.
Mm-hmm.
I would use my girliness when it was convenient. So, for example, if I'm losing at a game and then I'll start, I'm like, no, me, I said I didn't want to play.
Throw a fit,
Exactly, right? And then my brother is there. His friends are like my older brother, so they'll protect me as well, even if they're frustrated. So I grew up not just stereotypical girl, and very early in my life, like just pre-adolescent phase, I started realizing, I can't just be like a human. There's girls and there's boys. I really struggled with that. Also, I think my parents and my dad specifically was very intentional about not, how can I say, not enabling society to define you, like, so you're a girl and you play with dolls and whatever. So it was very intentional about that. I remember specifically, he would, like, the toys that I had were like gender neutral. I only had one doll, and it was...
What's the name of the doll?
It actually didn't have a name. It was just there for sometimes. I didn't relate to, like, having a doll. For me, I would rather have had like a doll that has organs and what, and I can open it up. But it had brown skin. It had brown skin. Yeah. So that was also very intentional because I think he didn't want the whole, societal thing. Funny story. I used to run. There's one time my brother's friend's younger sister. Wait, should I tell this story? Anyway, I don't think they're listening. I don't think they're listening. But so there was a thing where now I'm getting into adolescence. So like my aunties and my mom, and I think this is what I concluded, right? We're now making an effort to say, actually telling my brother, like, don't take her with you because now, she's like getting into like, girly age, and we want her to stop playing with boys. So if anything, find your friends' sisters and wanted to play with her. So one of the girls came over. They organized a play date for me. But me, I have my own ideas. And I don't like telling me what not to do. Right? So she came over. I gave it a chance. I didn't really know what was happening. This is all like in hindsight when I figured out that that's what they were doing. But I was like, okay, fine. Let her come one time and get off my back, and then I'll move on back to my sports, right? Yeah. So she came over and she had like this Barbie, like a play set and like tea, and I'm just like, this is not for me. Like, if I'm gonna play cooking, I would like go and get mini meal from the house, and I would cook, feed me and my crew like raw stuff. Someone got sick at some point, so anyway, she came over and I literally ran away from her. Like, I went to lock myself in my room, and then I remember the helper at the time had to come and look for me. Like, the chick was outside waiting, like, thinking, where are you? And I was just like, I can't play with, I can't do this. So
it was at that point you realized,
this is not for me. So needless to say, I think my brother was very ashamed, and I think he understood because he understood me, and he's also very protective of me. But I think it's the efforts of the adults were just failing. And I remember at some point it was like a big struggle until I went off to boarding school. So that's how I grew up, I guess. I don't know if you want to know anything else.
That's pretty much decent. Thanks so much for sharing. So I think something that was skipped was pretty much just highlighting the journey and the transitions that you have made throughout your upbringing and obviously part of your adulthood as well. I'd like for you to just speak into how your journey has evolved over time. So kindly just run us through how you started out in terms of the professional setup, what you studied, and what you're ultimately doing right now.
Okay. So relating like to my upbringing, one thing I forgot to mention is my dad was always an entrepreneur. Like, I remember he worked like for Parastate or something, I don't know. A government something, right? For a bit, and then after that, like, he went into music business. So for the longest time, I've always known him to be an entrepreneur, and obviously starting out back then,
Yeah.
Selling music essentially and music
Right.
related products. It was a new thing. So at some point, like in the beginning, family was involved. Like every employee was a family member.
Right.
And we like, I remember when the first shop was opened, we had to go and paint and da da da. Funny story, I ate styrofoam and got sick and poisoned ourselves, me and my cousin, because I was like, they're just like corn puffs. Went to look for it was a problem.
Call it being hands-on. You were hands-on.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was so curious.
Right.
And I believe, like, you couldn't tell me anything. Like, if you don't answer my question, all the more reason to go and figure it out myself.
Right,
so
right.
you're better off answering my question.
Yeah.
You know? But anyway, yeah. So I always, that sort of rubbed off onto me. And it was just the natural thing for me that, when I grow up, I am going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to do my own thing, run my own business and that sort of thing. So I grew up with that. And then even when I went to uni and did like a degree, I always had that in mind.
Right.
So it's sort of just been with me.
So what did you study?
Marketing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Business science, marketing.
Why that career choice?
For the specific reason that by that time I had realized, by the time it was time to go to uni, I had realized that I need to be doing something that I love doing, something that I'm interested in.
Right.
But where we're from, like in Zambia, and especially at that time,
right.
I would have, if I grew up in a different environment, like in the Western environment, for example, I probably would have been in an art school, a dance school, music school, something.
So
because
who influenced that decision to study marketing?
It was myself.
Ah, nice.
Yeah,
okay.
Because
why didn't you pursue those fields? You just.
I didn't know it was an option.
Huh.
I didn't know it was an option because. I didn't know that I would be able to go even, like I went to UCT, University of Cape Town, and they actually have a school of dance there, but I didn't know until I got there.
Right.
So I grew up thinking, okay, I'm probably going to go to Unza, one of these places.
Yeah.
But then I started looking at my options, like, I don't know if you remember, but I actually left in Pelembe.
Right.
In grade 11, first term.
Yeah.
Because then I started seeing like there are options to go and study abroad and what you need to do that. So I left because I wanted to do A-levels and condense my program so that I don't get into university too late.
Right.
Yeah. So all that was like me realizing that those were actually possible options. And then out of all the options I had in terms of my grades and what I could be accepted in, marketing was like the closest thing to like being creative and being free. Like for me, I've always had a thing about I need to be free.
The free, yeah.
Yes, I need to be free. I need to be free to be me, you know? So I mean,
there's only one you. So,
exactly, yeah. So that was like, I knew nothing like an accountant. Like even if I did those things, I'm sure I would do it in a way where I was still able to like integrate something that's uniquely me. I just didn't want to feel like a robot. I think.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up in marketing.
Okay, so you study marketing, you get your degree. What transitions from there?
So I got to a point where I had to figure out, okay, after my degree, am I going to try and stay on in SA and like build a career because the stream was there and like I've somewhat built a life there, or come back home.
Yeah.
And what are my options? Me coming back home, I knew I wasn't going to stick with marketing. Staying in SA, I would have.
Right.
But then I listened to my heart a lot. So I think my heart just told me like, this is not home. And it's also the corporate life is the corporate life. So I also got to realize that.
Is it boring?
I also got to realize that. You know, like.
Can you answer
I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it, right? So I got into marketing thinking, I'm going to be doing creative things all day, making ads, learning graphics. No. You sit in pitch meetings, you do administrative work, like all that is an aspect of it. Wonderful as it was, there's a lot of like even just going through the degree, like it opened my mind a lot and allowed me to see the possibilities. and not just in marketing, like in the business world in general.
Right.
But then I figured out you cannot escape the business. So even I realized the amount of work that would have to, formal work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So I said, if I'm going to do this formal work, I'd rather do it in my own specific,
on my own terms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not boring, but it's just not my thing. So it's not your thing.
Very clever
It's just not your thing.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So did you do some corporate work like before you transitioned into something that's like more you?
Yeah, I've actually had technically 5 jobs.
Okay.
All of them in line with marketing. First one was like a small marketing business.
Right.
I did a lot of administrative work. And that's the thing, like for you to climb the ranks, to get to a point where you're feeling like you can make a choice and have more of stuff done on your own terms, it's a process. So I'd rather go through that process, building my own customized thing. So so it was a small deal of administrative work. Then I got into the family business. Administrative work. Under marketing, but administrative work.
I can tell you do not like admin.
No, actually, I went to Airtel first.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to say, but yeah, I went to Airtel. So from a small company to a big corporation. Then after that, I went into a family business. Then after that, I went into, I don't want to mention, but yeah, it's something in entertainment-ish. Is it 3 or 4? About 4. Yeah, anyway, just about there.
Okay. So now you get to your 4th or 5th job. What was that one thing that made you realize, you know what? I am not going to do this anymore and I'm just diving into my own thing. Was there a specific incident? Was there something that triggered that?
I wouldn't say there was something specific, but especially at that time, it was sort of it's that thing where I'm like, okay, I've gotten out of the forest, so I'm not lost anymore. I'm much more clear about what I want, where I want to go. So even that other job, it was a part-time job. It was like working with it was an NGO, and so it was working with arts and that sort of thing with them, but I still ended up in admin. So I'm like, this again, right? So it just validated for me that you need to go, like, yes, this path is pretty set. No matter where you go, it's pretty set. So it just cemented for me, like, use this as a springboard for your next thing. So
okay. Interesting. So for those who may not know the kind of transition that you have had from your formal training, can you just speak into what journey you then decided to travel post that?
Post what?
Post the corporate or the admin.
So the corporate has been happening in and out, because even while I was doing that, I was still strategically thinking, how am I going to use every opportunity that I have, the benefit of a stable job, how am I going to use it to get me as comfortably and as conveniently as possible into what I really want to do.
I hear you.
But then the difficulty with that is that it's not sustainable to be straddling the fence. So I would find that, for example, I wouldn't work towards a promotion because I'm like, anytime now, I'm gonna leave. You get, so then that affects the amount of I guess resource or benefit that you get from doing the stable job. So at some point you have to commit to something. So it was always a game of like, so even the formal jobs, it was like in, out. I spent like a few years working, then I go and try my own thing, come back to it. So yeah. And also because I was very unsure and I'm going through, you know, life, like different phases of life, where family is like, what are you really doing? Why did you leave that job? Why are you making such
all
decisions?
Up in your face?
And you can't explain I've got a hunch. That's something will pop off outside of the, like, you can't explain that, right? So it was difficult. It was very difficult. So the decision to go into what I'm doing now specifically didn't come like at a moment. It's been like a build up. And I don't think it could have been done otherwise, because there's a lot that I learned from being in formal employment that's helping me now to manage myself when I've been able.
Interesting.
And it's not that I didn't commit. So I was always committed to making that full-time transition.
Right.
It's just how the conditions needed to align for me to be able to do that.
Okay. So you say you've been in and out of that space. I want you to just speak into the aspect of when you entered the arts, like full time, when you were just like, okay, this is something that I want to do now, and I will devote everything that I have. I'll devote my energy to just making sure that this kicks off. Like, what did you start with, and how did that journey then move on to where you are right now?
Okay, so my first entry into the arts was with dance.
Right.
And it actually, I made that decision when I was in my last year of university.
Right.
Because by that time, I had spent like about a year and some months, almost 2 years, training with a dance crew.
Right.
Yeah. So they happened upon me one time, and then they're like, "Oh, you're really talented, da da da." And that's without going too much into because that story is actually for me a very significant one. It took just one person to look me in the eye and say, "You have something special," and it sparked.
Right.
Like even to this day, I remember that day. I can remember where I was standing, you know. So it's like something sparked in me.
Yeah.
And then spending time training with them, I realized these people pay their rent from dance.
Right.
They, they're building like their careers. Right. And this is what I wanted. It was just, it felt like home. Like, oh, this is what I've been searching for.
Yeah.
So when I experienced that, that's also part of what prompted me to come back home.
Right.
Because I'm like, here's an opportunity.
Yeah, but in my thinking, the opportunities are much more vast there, don't you think?
But it's not home.
Okay.
It's not home. Mm-hmm. And then also I think that's just part of my purpose. Like I love to teach. I love to share. Like I'm that type of person who'd be like, oh guys, there's a plug this side. I found this.
Right.
I'm that type of person, I think. So I was like, I can go back home, and also I'm a homebody. I think it's also just my personality. I love being at home. I love traveling, but I love being able to come back home and spend time and ground myself. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to do. And I took it as an opportunity to say, okay, I can take this dance thing that I've learned here and build. And I was convinced. I didn't know how the world works, right? Yeah, so I was like, oh, I'm going to go back to Zambia, and immediately I'm going to hit the ground running, and boom, we're gone.
It's gonna blow.
Hey, I came back and I saw flames. Flames. Yeah, so, but I still decided, because for me, I took it as an opportunity. Like, if there's nothing like this in Zambia, let me be the one to bring it. Yeah. Right? So that one I committed to. That was my first time I committed, like, this is what I want to do. So even as I was going through the corporate jobs, I started with, because I was like, okay, dance is not like a well-established base or industry or even community. It took me a while to get to find like other dancers. Right. So I actually started with a modeling agency because a while back I had done like a model training thing, and that was big at the time, and it was in the free space. I call these things, I don't call it like entertainment, but I call it the free space, where you get to set your standards and not set your standards, but work on your own terms. Let me say, so that's what I started with. But the intention was always to get to dance. Like, dance has been a thing that's been like pulling me. It's been like my North Star.
So is it something that you grew up loving, or is it because of that one interaction you had with the person you just talked about?
The interaction sparked it, but I remember when I was in high school. Right. I think I was depressed.
Mm-hmm. Who dumped you?
No, not even. Not even. Yeah. Let's not even start talking about things from high school here, because there are people watching. So let's just leave it at that. Yeah. But I think I was depressed. I only realized like when I introspected and looked at my life. But I think I was depressed. So I remember I had a habit of I call it like I would get into like this gray space.
Right.
And I think I was like numb to a lot of things. But probably people wouldn't tell, you know. But I think I was numb and I spent a lot of time in my head. And then I would feel like I think I would just feel, let me just say, I would feel numb. And what I would do is I would dance in my head.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Okay.
There'd be like this dark space. Most of the time, like I was in a spotlight and I was probably wearing like whitish stuff and I was dancing. And I can't tell you what type of dance I was doing, but the only thing I can liken it to now when I've known about dance is contemporary dance. And it would be, so I think what I was also doing was sort of like meditating and going into that space.
Right.
And that helped me a lot. So even when I went into uni, how I ended up in dance, again, I listened to my intuition a lot.
Right.
I would love a lot less than I would love to, but I realized I actually do listen to it a lot. So when I went to uni, like in my second year or so, depression hit me again. But this time I was aware of it because I was going through some stuff.
Yeah.
And something just told me you need to be active. You need to be active. So I looked around for different societies. I ended up in a cheerleading society that only lasted 2 weeks. And then I ended up in a dance society on campus. And that's where I met an external person who was looking for dancers for like an amateur music video. And then boom, the rest is history. So something just kept pushing me, like just go and look for something active to do.
Yeah.
And when I started dancing, that feeling came back.
Right.
That soothing feeling of like when I would be in my head, but now I'm actually experiencing it like awake.
Yeah.
I was like, there's something here.
The liberation.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's something here. So so I can't say I had a thing for dance.
Yeah.
But then I met I think it was a primary schoolmate of mine.
Yeah.
That had been seeing me posting dance stuff.
Right.
And they're like, you were always a dancer. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
They're like, no, you all remember. Then I actually remember that there was a time I was like choreographing people.
Yeah.
And this was like as early as 5th grade.
Then you started remembering that.
Then I started remembering like, this thing has always been in my life. So for me, it's more than just a superficial thing. It's really like a spiritual thing to me.
Spiritual, eh?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so now you talked about how you came back to Zambia, right? And how in your mind you were like, look, when I go back and do this, I'm literally, like you had it in your mind how the whole thing was going to play out and how you're going to blow.
Yeah.
What happens from there?
So I came back and then there were no dancers. And
But yeah?
And then like I tried looking for some and I found like just one or two.
Yeah.
But they were doing something completely different.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, it's like being exposed to Olympic level, not Olympic level, but it was more advanced, right?
Yeah.
People are paying their rent through dance.
Yeah.
And then you come back here and then it's like...
Ground zero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, I felt bamboozled. Really? Like, what?
Yeah. Like.
Is this really? I even thought about going back. Like, it's not too late.
Yeah.
You know? But then something has always been pulling me. Like I said, for me, it's actually spiritual. So there's a lot of my life that's destined to be lived through dance.
Right.
And it's also tied to a lot of other people.
Yeah.
I've tried. Like, even all those 9-to-5s.
Right.
That's me trying like to get away, but then it just pulls me back. So I came back and then I remember I linked up with a cousin of mine who was teaching like salsa, and then that's another thing. Like my brother and my cousin, they were into like the salsa world because that was like the dance thing that was biggest. I think other than like rumba and traditional dance, I think the salsa was like. The salsa Latin ballroom type dances were the most common ones.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's just go close enough to this. And then he also he was a DJ and did wedding choreography.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, close enough. So everything that I would end up doing, okay, this is close enough, this is close enough.
But not quite.
Not quite, yeah. So that's how I ended up also joining him. And then I was like, oh, I'd like to try out teaching. I think I can teach. So that also prompted me to, like, get my teaching skills. And everything is self-taught. That's the beauty about the freedom, but it's also the burden at times.
Right.
So yeah, I just said, okay, let me focus on doing this. And also I think because everything was like, you can do anything because there's nothing.
Right.
That also gave me like some fulfillment when it wasn't stressing me out.
So speaking of the mentorship aspect, you've just talked about how you pretty much went into something without any form of guidance. Has that shaped who you are right now? Or do you feel that if you had somebody to pretty much hold your hand, things would have been fast-tracked in terms of where you would be right now? How has that played out? Like having somebody, like starting out something without having someone hold your hand.
I think I've never been that type of person, and most of my teachers or teachings
Right.
are come out of like a challenge, like, oh, so you think I can't do it? I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I think even if I had something like that, that's why I'm not even so stressed about not going to dance school, because dance school would have sort of programmed my mind that this is how it's done.
Right.
I love being like, how else can it be done? How would I do it?
Yeah.
So I think for me that wasn't an issue. It was very freeing, though. There are times where I was like, I wish someone could just tell me what to do. Because then you make mistakes, but then it's a learning experience. And then again, my ability to say, okay, this is an opportunity for me to be that for someone else.
Right.
So even as I'm learning, I learn to teach. But I also feel like the spiritual side of things, it's in my DNA to like teach. My older brother is a teacher.
Right.
My grandparents were teachers. Even my dad has like a lot of that teaching thing.
Right.
So like even when he would talk about the music business, even when he would bring home like CDs and whatever, and that was new at the time. You're moving from cassettes to CDs, and then I would be there like, how does this work? I'd be so confused. I'm like, what is it? He'll be like, he'll break it down, like, So I think the teaching thing is in my blood. So for me, it worked out.
Interesting. So you ventured into dance, and you say that was the introduction to the arts. What then did you transition into in terms of just exploring what is out there within the art industry?
So I have to say, like, for me, I never looked at it like the arts. It was just like the obvious thing.
Right.
It was just the way and unfortunately, I thought everybody lived like that.
Yeah.
Like, I thought everybody just followed their hearts.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's how it's supposed to be, though.
Yeah. So for me, it wasn't a focal point, like, I'm going into the arts. I just knew, for me, it was always the feeling.
I'm just being and doing me.
Yes. Yeah. Even with the fashion thing, I love fashion.
Yeah.
And I was just willing to try everything for as long as it felt good.
Right.
Yeah. And as long as obviously the conditions were permissible.
That's liberating.
Yeah.
So I want to speak into film now, because you pretty much transitioned from dance to film. How did that transition come about?
So anyway, long story short, I decided to do a masterclass with Kazadi Films. I think that it was their first masterclass, I think.
Right.
And then, but I actually went there to try and network.
Yeah.
Because I just, my contract wasn't renewed in the last job that I was doing. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do with my time and where am I going next?
Right.
And it wasn't actually intended to transition into something else. It was just like the stream we've been going on.
Yeah.
How can we build on it?
Right.
So for me, it was more about dance, but also, like I said, I don't focus on the arts as arts, and I don't categorize them as dance. For me, it's expression, it's the feeling. It's just different plates you use. So you use dance, you use film, you use fashion, you use podcast, you use public speaking. Yeah. So for me, it's one and the same. So I was just like, how can I just enrich my journey? And my intention was to find something more stable and structured.
Right.
So I realized, okay, I need to network. And also it was the phase of my life personal life that I was in. I had hermited for a while.
Right.
So I was trying to get myself out there. So I'm like, okay, let me just go to things that will allow me to meet out. Because I know, like with dance, people are recording all the time, you know. So I was just trying to meet industry people so that I can get more access to more structured things.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was my intention. I was just going to network and learn a new skill. Heck, you know what I mean?
None to lose.
Yeah. So that was my intention. And then lo and behold, I got feedback that you're a really good actress. So I'm like,
okay.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it felt good to me, and I'm like, let me try this. And also, I've always had an interest in acting.
Right.
And even in dance, there's elements of that. So for me, that's what I'm saying. It's one and this. There's no distinction because
like you just pretty much. Yeah, I get your point.
Yeah.
So you get into this space, which is pretty much natural, like you're saying. It's not even a transition from one element to another. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that you've gotten to the point where you're now fulfilled?
No.
Okay.
But I've gotten to a point where I feel more at peace with even the instability of it. So I feel like no matter what, I'm good, or I'm going to be good. Right. So I might not be good now, but that clarity about who I am, what really makes me at peace, is sharper. It's more stable. Okay. Like I'm more stable within myself. Yeah. So I wouldn't say, and I think fulfillment is eternal. Right. So once you're fulfilled in one thing, you get unfulfilled with being fulfilled.
Right. And then you just want to see what's
the next
out there.
thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. So you know you've talked about these two elements, and my thinking is whenever somebody would want to venture into something that looks like it's going to bring them fulfillment, yet doesn't sit well with the general populace, it's something that people usually just like shelve. They would rather hide. How did you get the courage to get in this space?
I think it comes from, not to sound esoteric and everything, it comes from my soul blueprint.
Okay.
I have always been that person, I was even say that kid that's like, why does this happen? You don't pay attention.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that's just it. Like anytime someone says, oh, you can't do this, I'm going to ask why, and I'm going to figure it out as long as I'm interested enough in it.
Right.
So if I'm interested enough, already by default, I'm taking it on. I don't even know if the balls come from somewhere or I was just there. I just have them.
Yeah.
But that's like it actually, that excites me.
Right.
To be like, oh, you think I can't do this. But it's not even like a personal thing. Right. It's more like, I just believe that's how everyone should be, kind of. And I certainly believe like that's how I am. Yeah. So for me, I'm like, no, but you can't tell me that I can't do that. Let me show you. But I don't do it for them. It's like a personal task that I feel I have to prove to myself. And in proving to myself, I know other people will see it. And the people that are meant to interact with that, engage with that, integrate that for themselves will see it. Because that's also how it's been done for me. Seeing other people like defy the odds and be different. Yeah. Those are the people that drive me. Those are the people that I watch. Those are the people that are inspiring to me.
Right. Interesting. So, Ngwana, it's I've always told you your journey is very interesting, and I find it very interesting because it's very unorthodox in terms of we have our minds are set. Growing up, your parents are gonna tell you what career choices you should make, and the moment you deviate from that, you're perceived to be an outcast, or they'll look at you in a certain kind of way. Did you get that negative vibe from your family or
Yes,
people close to you?
yes, and yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did get a lot. I feel like I even still do. But I think what happens and what I usually tell like other, because I mentor a few dancers
Yeah.
and I have mentored some, knowing and unknowingly, because also in the dance world, another unorthodox thing is that
Yeah.
a girl your age,
Right.
the style that you're doing,
Right.
shouldn't be doing this,
Right.
right? So what I usually tell them, and it's because I went through it myself and had to get myself to do it,
Right.
is when you let go of that and when you just put your foot down and say, I don't care what anybody else says,
Right.
other people will conform to your energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And those who don't conform will stay far enough away from you that
Right.
they won't um, engage you. And if they do, you will be unmoved if you truly are like
Yeah.
standing in your truth.
Yeah.
So eventually it dies down. It's not
Right.
sustainable when you know
Yeah.
who you
Yeah.
are and when
Yeah.
you just decide. So
Interesting.
that's it. Literally just took that to be like, I don't care. It's a process because there's different layers. You know, there's like, I'm broke. Why do I keep trying to do this thing? I am broke.
Yeah,
You
and,
know.
and I'm sure the kind of investment that you've put in it as well is, I mean, it has to show at some point, because it's not only the time, it's not only the spiritual connection that you have with it, but there's also finances involved. Because
Yeah.
if you have a baby and you want to see something grow out of what you're doing, there's a lot of stuff that goes in it. But I want to also just speak into, what makes somebody successful at what you're doing? Because I do realize that obviously you need to have the formal, well, I don't know if you need to have the formal education, because we just talked about doing something even without going to school for that. But I just want to speak into, if somebody is trying to get into this space, is there a blueprint that they should follow other than, just a passion that they have?
I would say the blueprint is know thyself.
Okay.
That's it. Because anything else is not in your control.
Right.
So if you're going to go and swim where the current is unpredictable, creatures that you never could have imagined or dreamed of could
Right.
come at you, then the only thing you can bank on is you.
Yeah.
So through whatever phase you're of the journey, you always your the only grounding thing, the only stable thing, the only thing you can rely on is you.
Right.
And you won't always know you.
Yeah.
It's up and down. You feel like, oh, I know me. Tomorrow something happens. You're like, wait, was that me?
Right. Right.
So, but that should always be like your North Star. That should always be like your blueprint.
Right.
Like, does this, when I put me and what I know about me so far, gaps and everything, shadows, bad side and everything,
Right.
you have to also be real with yourself.
Yeah.
When I put it over this thing, is it aligned? So for me, the alignment has always been confirmed with the feeling.
Yeah.
Like it used to be so ridiculous. I couldn't even say it to people. But now I say it proudly because that's the one thing that has helped me.
Yeah.
How does this feel?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. That's
How
it.
does this feel?
Yeah.
And then that informs like everything, like whether it's a logical decision, whether it's an emotional decision,
Right.
and you learn because that's how life is. I don't think there's a blueprint for life. So there's definitely no blueprint. Like even if you were in accounting, there's no guarantees
Right.
that,
Right. Right. Yeah.
that it's going to work out exactly as the conventional blueprint
Right. Right.
lays it out.
So speaking into Zambia and where we are currently in terms of maturity, how at what level do you think we're at in terms of the arts?
I think it's growing. I think it's growing for me. Like if I focus on the dance community or industry, definitely where it's at now is where I thought it was when I came fresh from uni, and I'm like, this is where we're going. So for me, it's bittersweet as well that this is where it is now, but everything happens as it should for a reason. So with that, I feel like everything just has its own journey.
Right.
I really don't try to attach to the idea of it's supposed to be.
Right.
Because if it was supposed to be, it's what's happening. So if it's happening, that's it's supposed to be, and it's for a reason. So you just need to find what's your place in that? How are you interacting with what is going on now?
Does it frustrate you that the maturity levels in the industry are not where they're supposed to be? And does that sometimes make you feel like, you know what, is this even worth doing? Because I mean, in my mind, my vision is we should be. I know you've talked about just appreciating where you currently are and not thinking so much like where we should be. But if you've got a conception in your mind, it's probably frustrating if it's taking ages to get to where you're supposed to be. Does that frustrate you?
So back to what I said. Like, I really don't believe in supposed to be. So yes, I do get frustrated. Yes, I'll have like my ideas and my ideals.
Right.
Because it's also about perspective. You know, like for some people who had a different experience, let's say I'll use dance as a reference, who had a different experience to mine, where it is now is like, oh my God. And that's their experience and it's valid.
Where is it? Maybe I need to understand where it is right now. Where is it?
It's where it's supposed to be. But no, look, so I want to answer your question, right?
Yeah.
So it does get frustrating. It's a moment type of thing.
Right.
And there are times where it's like really great.
Yeah.
So for me, I think my default when I'm really now I've learned something I've learned.
Yeah.
My default when I'm really struggling with something, or when I'm feeling like I'm forcing, or why aren't I where I want to be, and all of that. I'm just like, what do I need to know from now? Because when you figure out now, the closer you are, the faster you get to where you think you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that I call it the conversion rate of realizing that has become shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
So I don't like to stress
right.
about things that are there to stress, especially when there are other things that I can choose to focus on that are a better use of my energy.
Interesting. Let's talk money. The perception out there is this specific area, dance, is pretty much very young in our context or in our setup in Zambia. It's very, very young. And so you won't make money out of it.
Yeah.
So people shy away from it, not because they're not passionate about it, but because they feel it's not sustainable. Can you just speak into that? Is it an area that would bring satisfaction both in terms of what you're passionate about as well as something that is sustainable for you?
That's a heavy question because I'm now thinking back to all the different answers I have for that depending on where I am. But for now, I think it comes down to even, I think what I would have wanted to say with the previous question is that you determine what success is to you.
Right.
Yeah. So for a lot of people, and it's normal, I've been through that phase as well, where success is resources, finances, these world standards. But
you gotta eat, you gotta pay
you
your
gotta
rent.
eat, you gotta. So you make decisions and you live with them and you live with the consequences and you learn and you move.
Right.
So I think.
So my question is this decision paying off?
For me?
Yes.
Financially? No.
Okay.
Honestly, no. But also, at a certain point, I decided to not do dance for commercial
Right.
purposes,
Right.
and that was intentional. So
Mm-hmm.
for some people, because their measure of success is how commercially profitable something
Right.
is,
Right. Right.
they will go for that and they will pursue that. But I reached a fork in the road, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
where I had to decide: do I go the commercial route or do I just focus on a different way? And
Right.
of course, with my track record, I focus on a different way. Not that I don't want to make money out of it, but
Okay.
how
Yeah.
I make money is very important to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I'm not making money in a way that feels good to me,
Yeah. Sits
ultimately,
right with
it
you.
even affects my work. It
Your
affects
deliverables. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. That's very ethical of you to stick to the path that you feel is sane. Um, so look, you speak about how at the moment this is something that is not bringing in the amount of finances you would want. So what's your motivation to keep going?
Because I know what I'm building
Okay.
and I'm playing the long game. There's a guy called
Hmm.
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Right.
I used to listen to his stuff a lot. I've over listened so that I don't necessarily need to listen to new stuff because his message is the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from him, I got validation about or clarity about why I operate the way I do.
Right.
I'm a long game type of
Hmm.
person. I find comfort in that.
Right.
Like I said, oh, okay, that was mentioned off camera, but I love process,
Right.
right? So even the commercial thing,
Hmm.
it became so like I'm sure you've heard of like maybe even let's say what example can I give? Maybe sports.
Right.
When they focus too much on the commercial, it affects
Yeah.
their ability to deliver in the actual technical side of the
Yeah.
game and
Yeah.
what the game is about, right? So I started experiencing that, and I realized that I'm not the type of person that can sustainably do that for a long period of time.
Right. Right.
Like I
Right.
love the process. I love the self-discovery that happens. So when you're just, chucking out stuff for numbers,
Yeah.
for money, for me it gets old really quick and
Yeah.
it negatively affects me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it just doesn't align with my purpose for an extended period of
Yeah.
time. And it's
That's
just not my
that's
thing.
that's real. That's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've always played the long game. So even now, I know, and that's where even the time spent in companies and because
Right.
companies don't like I worked in Airtel.
Hmm.
Airtel didn't just register today and all of a sudden it's as big as it is.
Right.
So I've learned, even seeing my dad build his company from where it was, it's no longer existing now, but it was successfully existing for 25 years.
Right. Right.
Right? So 25 years is a long time. I've only
Long
been doing
time.
dance officially for like 15 years.
Right.
Yeah. So I know where I laid the bricks. I know the foundation. And the intention was always to get to the long game.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's just speak a bit about film. I know we touched on it a bit. Tell us about your journey in film.
So my journey in film, did I mention the masterclass? Yeah, so after I did the masterclass,
Right.
I was like, okay, I think let me try and do this. And it came at the perfect time where I was like looking for something else to either elevate with the dance, like significantly,
Yeah.
or just go into something different and obviously something that will supplement each other.
Yeah.
Because my intention is actually to have a trifecta of dance, film, and music.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've always been working towards that, and depending on the opportunities that come, I push in one
Didn't know
direction.
about the music. You
Yeah.
sing?
I sing.
Okay.
I don't sing like Whitney Houston. Let me just put it out there. You know why I
Yeah.
hesitate? Because there's always this standard: if you sing, then they'll ask you to sing, and then
Yeah.
I can sing, and also I'm someone who believes I can do anything. That's what even got me with
Nice,
dance. I'm
nice.
like, I can see that. I'm a human being. I've got limbs, and I understand enough. I can do that. I can. If it takes me 10 years, if
Yeah.
I want it enough, I can do it. So
And
even with
and you
singing,
have perfected your craft. Like when I see the clips of you dancing, I'm like, how does she even do that?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, my attitude especially with like my older years. In fact, it's been throughout. You can do anything.
Right.
So it's just how long are you willing to take to get there?
Right. Right.
And even are you willing to take the risk of not actually getting there, but knowing that you going through that process is going to sprout so many other things that you even have no idea. You might find yourself on the moon.
Yeah.
You know, you started through singing, then you meet Elon Musk or whatever. I don't know, but it's something. You know. So I'm a person that believes in that. So I can sing. I don't have the greatest like voice. I'm not Whitney Houston, but I can sing. I've tried out. You know, some people have heard me. Whether they were just lying or not, it's their own fault. But me, I'm going with it.
Okay. Is it something that you want to explore?
Yeah, I have started actually.
Oh, nice,
I've talked to a few people. So, like I said, I'm a long game.
To do a collab? I'm a rapper.
Oh, really? I also rap. But I don't do like free. I'm not yet at freestyle level, but I write.
Okay.
Yeah. So even with singing, I write. I've written a few songs actually. We are not going to play them today. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that transition is very interesting. So you get into film, like after the masterclass and everything, when did you then realize that, oh, okay, I can actually do this on
With
a large
film?
scale? Yes.
It just happened, to be honest. Like, it just happened. Like most things, I set an intention, like internally, like, oh, this is what I want to do. It would be nice. Oh, I wonder, you know, and then my energy just goes towards
that direction, yeah.
And when an opportunity comes, I gravitate towards it.
Yeah.
Also, depending on how excited I am by it, I'm like, oh, I think there's something here. So I'll move maybe faster towards it or more intentionally towards it. So even with film, I went to masterclass and then it was like, oh, this is something you can do. So I started going back to things that I used to do before, like where I would, like when I watch a movie, I would sit and I think, what would it take for me to pull off this character as authentically as this person did? I wouldn't think, what would it take to act? For me, it was, what would it feel like? How would they do it? And I would try it out. Like, okay, and it would just come out of interest of whatever character or the movie or the story. So that's where it came from. So now when I'm like, oh, I think I can actually, like someone has actually confirmed for me. Because when you're doing it by yourself, you're like, am I really, maybe I'm just guessing myself, you know? And so when it was confirmed for me, then I'm like, okay.
Validated,
I think let's try this more intentionally. So now I start actually going on YouTube. Bless YouTube, this University of YouTube. And I'm like looking at stuff and trying out different things. And also even realizing like in the masterclass, I wasn't completely lost. Like because of dance again, like editing my own videos and what I understood things like color grading and that. I might not know them on like a professional app, but I know them on CapCut or whatever. So I understand the basics enough that I can even see, okay, I'm more interested in this and less of this. But I was generally interested in everything. So from then, for like a few months, I gave it, maybe even just a month actually, I gave it a try, like started looking for, I didn't even look for auditions, it just started popping up. And the beauty of social media is that when you search something, for example, on YouTube, now all of a sudden there's a connection or something that pops up on your Facebook or whatever. So, I started seeing things and started following them up. And I didn't even do that many. And that's where the spiritual side of things comes in. Like when you are good with yourself, what you need just comes to you. Without like fighting for it. So I did like an online audition for something. And then I even missed the deadline. So I know my video was bad, but I just pushed myself to finally do it. And I was struggling with a lot of things like, why do you always like, you know? So it was, but then what I've learned about such moments in my life is there's always something. So just
something
go
underlying, You
don't know. Don't stress yourself.
Just keep at it.
So I didn't go through, but I was also very open-minded, and it was anyway, I ended up in a group chat where there are like a lot of actors or whatever. So it kept that interest alive. And then all of a sudden, an old acquaintance of mine that I met through dance and hadn't seen for 10 years, met them at the masterclass. And then they're like, so we're both surprised, like, dancer.
Yeah.
What are you doing
What you
here?
doing here?
You know,
Yeah.
and then he was like, no, I'm into film and I work for a production company and
Right.
I'm a writer and da, da, da. And then so I was like, okay, cool. This seems interesting.
Yeah.
I'm looking to like get into film.
Right.
So if you have any projects, whatever, it doesn't even have to be acting. Like I
Yeah.
can come and intern for you or
Yeah.
whatever, that sort of thing. Just let me know. Putting myself out there because
Right.
remember, like I said, at that period of time, I was really intentionally trying to get out more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I think maybe no, in fact, a year, almost a whole year passed, and then he just called me up one day. He's like, hey. There's this audition, da da da.
Right.
So you should go through that, and that's how I went through, and got the part.
Interesting.
And now I'm in a TV series.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're practically doing something that is airing.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, so let me plug it here. Can I plug it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the TV series is on Zambezi Magic.
Okay.
It's called Chocolo.
Uh-huh.
It's like a local production.
Okay.
And it airs like every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Kudos. That's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
First time on set. And you're on Zambezi Magic.
No, those are big moves. Those are big moves. And yeah, I can already see where this is going.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, kudos. So I do realize that, having such a routine can be strenuous, it can be stressful. How do you keep yourself sane in such an environment and with everything that you do?
It's trial and error. It's really trial and error. It's really, no, let me not sit up here because that's actually one reason why I documented my dance journey a lot when I started freestyling.
Right.
Because that was like everything I do has a deeper story behind it. So when I started documenting, and it's something I've also always had, I think, from childhood, I've always seen what I do as a message.
Right.
Even if I'm doing it for me, I know it's a message. I know it's
Yeah.
hitting someone somewhere. So I always project this thing that I'm doing. What level of clarity do I have about how I'm going to explain it when I'm sitting? Before it used to be when I'm seated with Oprah doing my interview.
Right. Yeah.
So when I made the decision to document, it was like, okay, I don't want people, it will be hard for me to say, oh, remember that time when I want to just reference, okay, this is what was going on.
Yeah.
And then you can sort of see
Right.
you can even see the progression. Yeah. Now remind me, there was a reason I went there. I go off a lot. It was, how do you maintain a schedule?
The sanity, yeah.
So it's really trial and error. And also everything I do is like so personal to me.
Right.
There's always a story there. So even in the times where, like now, it's easy to say, oh, I just did this and this. But no, it was just going with what's happening at the time and just trying to survive it.
Interesting.
So now it's even hard for me to talk about, like, let's say the struggles. I know, like you even mentioned about like the struggles with family and whatever. It's a very real thing.
Yeah.
It's a very real thing.
Right.
And it's not easy by any means.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to make choices and sacrifices.
Right.
So I made my sacrifices. You just have to be able to live with it.
Right.
And that's why I go back to saying, when you know yourself, you know what you're able to deal with.
Yeah.
Like other people can't deal with, at my age, not being married.
Yeah.
Other people can deal with not having kids. Other people can deal with the pressure of their family saying, yo, why aren't you married? Why don't you have kids?
Right.
I want kids. I want to be married, I think. But yeah, those are some of like the huge sacrifices in terms of what's conventional. But to me, because of what I'm getting out of it, it balances out. Not that it doesn't irk me or it doesn't frustrate me. No, but there are other things that I get from doing things the way I've done that are fulfilling to me. So it balances out, and then I can say I'm good. And it will happen when it will happen.
Nice.
If it's meant to happen.
Okay. So we're just wrapping up our conversation now, Ngwana, but I'd like to hear from you what kind of advice you would give to somebody who wants to be liberated like you. Yeah, like just following a path and really much identifying that opportunities are there. Like what kind of mindset should they have, and just kind of guidance would you give them?
I think, first of all, I would say define for yourself what liberation is to you.
Right.
Because this kind of, for me, it's for some people, what I'm doing is radical.
Right.
They don't get it.
Yeah.
You know? And they definitely wouldn't dare do it.
Yeah.
For some people, they see certain things and they think, oh, that's cool. And I want to do it too. Maybe there are very few though. But you know, on the surface, I understand it can look a certain way. But you don't know the number of times that I've been like, I think I messed up and this is just not for me. So know what liberation is for you. And it doesn't have to look like anybody else's. And sometimes even when it does, you still have to deal with you. So just be real with yourself and strive to know yourself, like truly know yourself.
Yeah.
And even I'm not sitting here claiming that I know myself. I'm just much more comfortable with where I am and who I am now. And I think that also comes with age, to be honest.
Right.
But also what you do with your age is important.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's it. Like know what you like, know who you are, and accept who you are for as long as it gives you peace. Because even when I say, like, I wanted to say feels good, but feels good can often be misconstrued to only mean good feelings. No, I even know, like, okay, but when I'm being unreasonable, this is how I am. And also it's like a self-awareness that you know how other people receive you, because you always have an explanation for, but it's because you pissed me off, that's why. But you know, to someone else it's a totally different thing. So yeah, it's just a process of knowing yourself and use your intuition. You are where you are, you feel what you feel, you think what you think, you say what you say, you do what you do for a reason.
Right.
And the more clear you are about that, I think the easier it is to navigate life.
That's deep. So what next for Ngwana? Have you set out a strategy for yourself?
Yes, but I'm not about to tell you because we'll be here for another 3 hours. But yeah, like I mentioned, like I'm really, like now we finished shooting for the season 2 of Chocolo. And now I really want to like develop as much skills as I can and sort of fast track my progression and my growth. Yeah, because even just being on set, like I learned so much and I'm still like eager to learn more. So I just want to do that now. Yeah.
Interesting. Ngwana, it's been deep. Thank you so much for coming through to the Talent Plug podcast. Really appreciate it. I think a lot of our viewers, a lot of our listeners would have really gained a lot from our conversation and picked out quite a few nuggets from that. So thank you so much for coming through. Thank you for sharing your life experiences as well as your journey. And like I said, it's been real. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. So this has been the Talent Plug podcast. Stay inspired.